Hi guys, we are live and we are building PowerApps applications here on this channel. Especially today, we're building an onboarding application using SQL Server as a backend. And for the past few weeks, we have been going screen by screen and building out this application. I'd say it's probably the largest. I shouldn't say the largest. No. More on the larger side of apps that I build here on the channel. So this is going to be broken up over several weeks. Every once in a while, we'll take a break and do something else. But I know a lot of people are interested in this because they want to see what it's like to build an application using SQL Server. It's my favorite data source, and we've been having lots of fun here. And this application has a lot of could be used for a lot of ways. So any organization has an HR department that is a decent size, and typically you want to onboard your employees. You might want to onboard your customers. Um, so there's a lot of different ways that we could utilize this. So let me make us into mini me's down here, Kurt. Get us situated down here so the users so the viewers can see the screen here. So we have the onboarding app. Now I'm going to bring up the ERD diagram here. So this is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. A lot of times this is called SSMS. And what's great about SQL Server, using that as a data source, it has a built-in ERD diagram. And it updates the database if we were to modify it and vice versa. So if we modify the data, we open up this diagram, it's going to be updated. That's always been a little bit of a pain in the butt whenever you have some type of documentation or diagrams. Is typically you come up with those at the beginning of the project, and as time goes on, things change slightly, and nobody goes back and updates the documentation. Nobody updates the ERD diagram. Well, in this case with SQL Server, it's always going to keep them synced up, which is very nice. So let me sort of review what we have here. So this is going to be an application that works across organizations. So I could sell this software as a service. Okay. So I'll have my organization in there. Kurt, we have a fictitious LLC for you. And then we've got tenants that could be a part of an organization. So I have multiple tenants. And then within a tenant, you've got organization environments, and then within environments, you've got apps. Okay. And then with all four of those things, you've got users that could be attached to one or more of those, right? So we got users down here. For each of those four entities that I just showed you guys up here, these are mapping tables in between users and these four entities. Okay. And we actually talked a little bit about this last week when we were building on to the application administration screens that deals with this. And we'll continue that this week. But I just sort of wanted to really make this clear. Wherever you have a many-to-many relationship, you're going to have a mapping table in the middle with a traditional relational database system like SQL Server. Okay. So what I mean by many-to-many and what the industry means by many-to-many. So you've got an organization that has many users a part of it, right? So the users are down here. Okay. But let's say I needed to be a user in several organizations. Well, the system will handle that because I've got a mapping table in the middle.
Yep.
And the same goes for all these others.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm keeping an eye on the comments. I see you guys coming in.
I've got a question. Just real quick, Darren. Just
sure.
Because I know that you're working on the user portion of this thing. But
yeah.
Do we have a mechanism below for each environment's persistent data? So
yes.
Okay.
So that would be right here. This is the environment table.
Now, can we have persistent data across different organizations? Can one organization, let's say my fictitious organization wanted to merge with your organization, and we wanted to share data? Is that have we got that capability, or are we going to try to build that into it?
Okay, so merging organizations wasn't something that I was. Now, what we could do, this is all set up for the users, so users could span all of these things.
Right.
So I mean, in that case, in this particular use case, what I would do is I would add both of you and me, Kurt, to each of the organizations that we're a part of. But as far as in merging the organizations, no, that wasn't. I'm trying
Now,
to think.
I wasn't really
Mhm.
thinking about merging the organization exactly, but maybe sharing the data type of thing, where
Okay.
we have, maybe we're using the same customer base. Um, you know, that
Okay.
I thought that might be a very real situation these days.
In the situation of like a merger or something like that, or
No, maybe a sister company that got spawned off a different organization,
okay.
as a separate organization, and
Mhm.
sharing the same, maybe. And actually these days, maybe somebody's selling customer information to another corporation. They're sharing the same big table here. That's what I was just thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're gonna sell information, which of course you wouldn't wanna do unless that's a part of your privacy policy for your organization.
Right.
Just wanted to throw that out there. A little disclaimer. So when I collect information, I don't sell that to anybody, of course, but I
But
think a lot of people see that as a bad practice. However, if
there
that
are
was a
companies
use,
that do that. Yeah, there's companies that
yeah.
do that, and they're in the business of
So
doing that. Yeah.
in that case, let's say you needed to export the data or something like that would either be a different type of application or it'd just be like an export or something like that. That would probably be a completely a different type of thing. Now it could tie into this data if you need to, or maybe you would provide some API endpoints that allow organizations to get at that. But that wasn't within the scope of the of this onboarding application.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask the question early on here. Okay.
And in fact, when you start to build an application, it's really important that you sort of hone in on the smallest viable product that you can release. Otherwise, you'll just continue to have ideas. Oh, well, I wanted to do this. Oh, and I wanted to do this. And if you put that all in there and try to write it all at once, you'll just never get it done. In my experiences, I'm a little pessimistic with IT projects. Um, yeah, focus on the smallest thing possible. Release that, get people using it, and then add to it from there. Um, and I see two of my accelerator students here that have joined as panelists. And just a reminder, guys, if you show your video, I'll take that as a sign you want to come on, and I'll bring you on. And if you hide your video, I'll leave you off. And so I see a lot of good mornings. There's a question here. Let's see. Let's bring this up. Can we ask a question? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's the great thing about the live streams is that I keep an eye on the comments, and as long as it's related to what we're doing, or even if it is unrelated and I can answer it quickly, a lot of times I'll try to answer those. All right. So this is the data that we're working with. So I'd like to complete the user admin screens that we have for this. Now, what we have at this point, we have a developer screen that allows us to set up this type of stuff. And I would say an application administration would be a level of, as we set all these things up, adding users to organizations and all these things. Us as the developer, we need screens to be able to add this data. But at some point, like let's say in the app admins, so I'm servicing an organization and they have application administrators and they need to add, edit, delete their own data, their own users, that type of thing. So there'll be screens for those user types. So we'll be borrowing from what we build here in the developer section. Um, right. So Wes says, to that point, I tried to create a large project encompassing several features, but opted to pare it down in favor of delivering a better product and actual getting it done. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I've seen that a lot of times where at the beginning, you're trying to gather and you want to gather all the information that's available, but you want to circle back with your stakeholders, whoever you're building the application for, and set expectations. Otherwise, you might have a little bit of a disaster on your hand if you don't manage the expectations of what you're delivering and somebody's paying you for either the product or your time, and their expectations aren't met. You need to have a discussion like, hey, what exactly are you expecting? Or hey, this is what I'm going to be delivering here. And then all the other features that come to mind will be released later, but we're going to get you this part here, which is typically the most important.
I guess to go along with what you're saying in that it's important not to try to build too much into an app, especially in the beginning. You want to try to come up with an MVP, but also I think as important, or maybe even more important for me,
Mhm.
this is my practice, is when I'm taking on a new project, I'll even no matter what features decide to be put in through the business meetings, I'll sit back and I'll try to think what's going to happen down the road. I try to project what are the potentials down the road, and I try to write my code as much as possible according to that, so that it is open ended. So that way, if somebody wants to put a piece in it down the road, it won't be too hard to plug a feature in. Try to make it as plug and pray as possible, right? Um,
Plug and pray.
plug and pray, because that's what you end up doing, right? But that's kind of what I do. We're not building the features, but we're thinking about the features in the future. You know what I mean? So the possibilities of. There we have it.
I spared you guys my sneeze. I muted my
Oh,
my
okay.
mic there.
Okay. I thought you were waiting
Yeah,
for more stuff.
I felt a sneeze coming on. I'm like, oh, here we go, and I'm like, at least I'll mute it. Spare you guys the noise. Yeah, absolutely, Kurt, and that's actually something that stuck with me as you taught me a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's how I think, and I think part of that is I'm preaching to myself because I want to build things in a way that are very flexible. That
Yep.
yeah, you never. That's one thing that you always taught me. A phrase that always stuck in the back of my mind. Hey, Darren, don't code yourself into a corner.
Yep. Yep.
Could
Or
could
into a
you give
box.
could you give us a I don't know, a 1 to 5 minute spiel on coding yourself in a corner, what that means, how to avoid it? Because I think it's really valuable what you say. I think it's underrated, you know.
Well, one of the things, most importantly, I think, is when you're working with like what we're talking about right here. That's why I asked the question about what I did with the data. That working with the data when you're designing your data, that's the most important thing. Let's say
Yeah.
if you decide I'm going to build this app that's going to track widgets, okay, whatever widget it might be, some kind of widget out there, we're tracking it. And we decide we're going to go ahead and put that into a table. We put it in one table, we stick it in that table, and we build an app around that one table. And then we realize, okay, so each widget has a customer. So now I've got customers for every widget I'm tracking. I've got that same customer name being brought in there. So it wouldn't be very good, would it? So what I got to do is I got to break that customer out into a customer table. But I built this thing into a one table situation. So now what I've got to do is I've got to change my data structures, right? To make a customer table and a widget table. Well, then you're going to have a mapping table in the middle of that. So what ends up happening is if you build your application with that one table, you're going to have to go out there and re-engineer your application to be able to look at now 3 tables, right? So now you're doing a lot of refactoring. I guess we call that refactoring, right?
Mhm.
But if you go into the beginning of this project and say, okay, you know what? I've got these widgets. Well, what am I doing with these widgets? Well, customers are going to be buying these widgets. So I've got to deal with customers and I've got widgets. Well, then maybe we want to have a history table. So we start thinking about that and breaking our tables out there. Well, maybe right now they don't really care about history. You know, they just want to have a point of sale program that says, okay, the customer bought 3 widgets and it costs this much money. Well, what happens if the widgets change price? You know, what are you going to do with that? Yeah. So this could happen down the road. So what I do is I write my program in a way to be able to garner that information if I need to. So like later on, if somebody needs a customer, I'll just go ahead and put the customer. My program's going to automatically go out there and grab that customer. So that's just a way of thinking about it. You don't necessarily have to do it today. Like Wes said up there, he had a some of them features you don't have to have, right? So what we want to do is we just want to get, hey, they just asked for customers and widgets. That's what we're going to build. But we know they're coming back in 6 months asking for that history table. We know. So we're going to build our program in a way so that in 6 months, it won't take me 20 minutes. But I'm not going to tell them that. I'm going to say, oh, no, this is going to take months to do. Months to do. Anyway, there you have it. There's my 5-minute spiel. What do you think?
I like it. I
hope you guys made sense of all that out there.
I was sort of laughing at the end because we're not going to tell them that, but I know you're saying that kiddingly because, Kurt, I know you're a very honest person, and we've known each other for a long time, so people don't know you as well as I do, but there is something to be said for work in IT, or at least work in software development. There is this weird thing where there's this perception, if you're not managing expectations, when they'll hold back from you, when they'll see some progress. Sometimes programmers or software developers, they get in this stigma where people say, oh, well, he just goes back in the back and codes for a few weeks, or
that's right.
It's like they want to know, hey, what are you doing back there? Are you doing some magic or what?
I am so ready to blow up right now. My mind is just going because of what you're talking about right here. It's just I got so many things I want to say about this, man. So
all right.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you hold on to that thought, I just want to make sure we're keeping up to date on the comments, because a lot of comments are coming in.
Okay, very good.
But don't forget what you're about to say, though.
I hope I won't.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to display some of these things on the screen here. We're upgrading devices. Okay. Maybe Windows 10, 11. Maybe that's what that means.
Yeah.
I have a Microsoft form. I'd like to appear the first user logs into his device. Okay. I don't think that we'll go over that today. By the way, if you post that question over in our community, and I will display the information for the community at the top of the screen here.
Yeah, I was
post
just going
that
to
in
say
our community. Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Darren. That'd be great. If these guys aren't part of the community, they need to be part of the community. And some of these topics that we won't be able to cover right in this moment, maybe we can cover them throughout the community, right? And then you were just getting ready to go down that road. So,
yeah. Power Pages. I do have a video when Power Pages was first released. When I heard about it, I created a live stream about it. As far as in tutorials on Power Pages, I don't have any of that yet. That might be something that we branch out into future. But right now, we're really focused on building Canvas apps in PowerApps. Do you know when it will be available for multiple people to create the same Power App? No, I think it will be. I don't think there's anything that's been publicly stated by Microsoft about that. And if I knew something about it, I wouldn't be able to tell you because I've signed NDAs. So I can't talk about it even if I did know something. So yeah, so I would stick what I do, and I recommend everybody does, is go out to the Microsoft Power Platform blog and actually subscribe. So you get an email with any new news. They release that on their blog. I've noticed that they've already put in a feature where two people can be in at once. The first person can edit, and the second person is just a fly on the wall, as Kurt and I would say. And it's just a read-only state. So that's all I can. That's all I know to say about that. And then we have Prince from Maryland. Okay, welcome. What's the best practice or way to get the right formulas in building apps, please. So there is a video that we did a while back called the 20 Power Apps functions that you must master before you're the Power Apps master. I would definitely recommend checking that out. We go into the coding in that quite a bit. So that would, and also Prince, be sure to join the community. So is there a specific function that you're having an issue with that you know, I could either direct you to a video or we might actually cover it today. But I did want to sort of touch on if you're an accelerator student, we spend a lot of time on making sure the requirements are gathered. And I'm going to pull up what we had over here. Just while Kurt was talking, I was identifying the things that would become entities in our application.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a very important thing that you'll do when you start on a new project. And it's one of the things that I find that most people getting into Power Apps lack is they don't have any experience or training in the software development lifecycle process. Okay, which would include uh, planning. You could put a lot of things into that planning stage. Then you have code construction, then you have testing, you have deployment, and that's an iterative process, which means you could start to develop stuff and realize, oh, you need to gather more requirements, and you might go back to that phase. So I've seen so many people try to create an app or Power BI report without planning. You have to plan and create tables, queries that you need to build the application or the Power BI report. I completely agree with that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here into Power Apps. Okay. So this is the screen that we were working with from last week. And what this screen will do will be listing all the users. And it looks like I've got a collection here. Let me see if that is actually populated with any data. It says it's a table value, but nothing's in there yet. So what I want to do is go search for this and see where it is populated and ask myself, why hasn't it been created yet? So we do have dev user management. What screen are we on here? Dev user management. We have an on visible. Okay. We clear things out. Okay. Let's see what we have here. So we have a user organization. Okay, so this table right here is what we're looking at. And it's filtering it based on this here. Okay, so that organization ID. So that's what we sort of start things off with. But if there's nothing there, nothing's selected yet. So if I go in here and say Neese LLC, there we go. So it actually built the collection or modified the collection once I selected something there. But I think when the screen first shows up, I want maybe all the users to be displayed there so they can see everything. Okay, so what I could do here is I could look at this and I could say, or is blank. Okay, so if the ID of there's nothing selected, the ID property of the selected will be blank. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll save that. I'll go to a different screen. And Kurt, I know you were away for a few moments there, and I was asking you to keep your thought. Did you want to go into that more, or please share what you were thinking?
Well, yeah. There's a couple things I want to say before I do that. And that one is some of these people out there could be watching this and thinking, well, there's just a couple knuckleheads out there just talking about stuff, And
Yeah.
you guys might notice there's a history here when we start working on these live streams. And I think it's the beauty of the live stream is that every line of code we put in here, we start talking about stuff because there's a philosophy behind what you're putting in. We're not just, a lot of people just get on these videos and watch them on YouTube, and they cut and paste, or they talk about, okay, I'm going to put this in here and it's going to work. But you really don't know why it's going to work or how you need to be thinking about why it's going to work. And so many people I know, they ask me, well, what is the mindset to be able to write that code like that? You know, it's more than just painting a screen and putting controls up on a screen. It's why are you putting that control on that screen at that moment? And what are you going to do with that thing? And why do you do that? And when do you do that? And so there's so many things behind that. And that's, I guess, you know, we get into some long conversations about that as we're coding. And that's why it takes forever to get some of this coding done. But that's that's probably at least 50, maybe 60% of the whole purpose of why we're doing this thing, is to try to show you guys how to do this and try to train your mind a little bit and how to think about this, you know? So I wanted to say that before I started talking about what I wanted to say earlier. And this is kind of important too. You know, Darren said, well, you know, I know you're not a Sky Kurt, and, you know, I know you're not going to charge people a lot of money for something, you know, that you can get done in 5 minutes, right? But there's another side to that. And I remember back in the old days when we had Visual Basic going. It's hard to believe that that's the old days now. But that's when the beginnings of this rapid application development really started. That's when the no code or low code thing really started, movement. It started back then, because before then it was all C and C++ and Pascal and Fortran and all these other we call them the more fundamental languages. But let's just take C++ for an example. And we used to argue, and Darren, you used to be in those classes when some of these guys would come in. I'd get these C++ hot shots into my Visual Basic class, and they would be talking about how, you know, well, you know, my C++ program goes much faster than your Visual Basic program, you know, and we'd have to have these arguments. And of course, I would be talking to them about how, look, if you know what you're doing and you know how to program, I can make my Visual Basic program, which is an interpreted language, not a compiled language like C++, and I can make that thing go just as fast. My Visual Basic program go just as fast as your C++, because number one, all programs and all computers wait at the same speed. I don't care where you're at, what kind of rocket science you're using, all applications and all computers wait at the same speed. So you're waiting for the prompt, you're waiting for input, user input. So I said all that to say, I can get my Visual Basic program done probably 80% faster than a C++ programmer, because I was both. So I know. You want to lay some code in C++, and some of you guys out there know what I'm talking about. You know, it's a good job. It's a hard job. You're really thinking the whole day. Whereas you come into Visual Basic and you're just whipping stuff off in 20 minutes. What would have taken all day to do, you know? Yeah. So we take that back. But now when you're building features, now we're going to be talking about what we were talking about earlier. When you're building these features, you want the people, and I would say, oh, this is going to take forever, you know, to do. It's going to take a long time to do. Because you want, and Darren touched on this, you want to manage expectations on people. Like, don't make it just easy just for people to come in here and say, hey, yeah, put this thing in here. Because what's going to happen is, and there's a person out there right now that's that we've been dealing with that's been working, and she's been dealing with a company that they found out that she can whip things out really fast, and they're just hammering her, and she can't even think straight half the time, because she's got stuff coming from every direction. So what you've got to do is, and Darren touched on that, you got to manage these expectations. So what you're doing is you're saying, oh no, it's going to take a long time. But now you've got it set up so that you can get this stuff done in 5 minutes. I do it to Darren all the time. I'm always doing that to Darren. You know, he's my boss, right? And we've got like 4 or 5 projects going on. And I'll be over here, I'll get something done a little bit early. So I'll start working ahead on another project. And then he won't even know that I'm working on that. And then he'll be going, well, is it going to be done? Is it going to be done in time? Is it, because a deadline's hitting, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I already got it done. And he's like, shoo. And then you look like a hero, right? So it's all about managing.
How to manage your manager. How about that? That's something they don't teach you.
Yeah, how to manage the manager. Right. Well, you got to be able to do that, because otherwise your boss is going to have a heart attack. And you got to make sure that he's going to be okay. My whole job is to make Darren look good all the time. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do that even when he doesn't even know I'm trying to do that. And I'm using him as an example, but you guys all have bosses out there, and I'm sure that you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been dealing with the pressure of people coming in and changing things or adding things. So you want them to have to think twice about coming to you to add something, because you know what? It's going to take a minute. You never say you're going to be able to get it done in 5 minutes. Under promise, over deliver. That's got to be the rule, right? So you say, no, this is going to take forever, and then you get it done fast and you look great. Back in the old days, we had this program called MASH. And Radar was the dude that was getting everything done behind the scenes. Right?
Oh, when you say program, you mean a television program?
Television program. I'm sorry. Yeah. There's an old television series called MASH. I should have said series, but Radar was the guy, and it was all about implementing the supply system that was underneath all this stuff. And that's kind of what we're doing with this programming. We are implementing the technology to get things done faster, but we're trying to win in this thing, not become over inundated in it. So it's not about being dishonest as much as it's about managing expectations. There you have it.
Yeah. And I like what Mike Gillis said here, like Scotty on Star Trek. Scotty was the one guy, he was the engineer, right? In the engine room.
It was the Scottish. I'm giving it all I got, Captain. I'm giving it all I got. But he always had a little bit left in the tank that he could get, but he never told the captain that, right?
Because the captain will have unrealistic expectations, like, listen, how long is it going to take to repair blah? He goes, oh, this is going to take 10 minutes. It's like, you got 2.
Yeah, well, you know this, Darren, you're the boss. You're a manager. So if you know that there's some resources available, you're grabbing resources. As a manager, you're just trying to grab resources and allocate resources. So if you think I've got a resource over there, you're using it. And that might be a problem. So I got to make sure you don't know about that resource just yet.
Kurt, we might have to have a offline discussion about this, I think. Yeah, guys, we're not following outline typically for our live streams. No. So I guess how I take on, I think we're both coming from the same, or we're thinking the same. How I would phrase it is, you don't want to, the first few things or the first few weeks on a project or working with a client or whatever, you're setting precedences. So let's say you're just like really eager to please and you want to make a great impression. You don't want to take too long, whether it really is taking you that long or not. But there is a huge downside to making tons of progress up front. Maybe you're just, again, really eager to please, and you want to knock this one out of the park, whatever, and you stay up all night and you get tons of things done. They're like, oh, wow, cool. Okay, thanks. You might get, customers don't always realize the value that you give them.
That's right.
They may not know that you worked all night to do something.
That's right.
But you set a precedence. Oh, I asked for this screen. The next day, it's done. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so they give you something else, and guess what? Next day, they're going to expect the next one to be done.
That's right.
So there's a little bit of a balance, and
there is.
That it might seem like this has to do. I don't know. I feel like this is a weird topic because I don't want anybody to misunderstand what either you're saying, Kurt, or what we're saying together, which is integrity. I don't think we would ever recommend people deceive others, but you have to keep in mind these precedences that you're setting. That's right. And what they will want from you is even more performance in the future. They think, oh, well, as this software developer is working with me, my business, they're going to know more, and they're just going to end up doing things even more, even faster, So,
what you're trying to do here, Darren, is you're trying to put your hand on the valve. You're trying to control the faucet a little bit with the resource. Okay, because what you have, the only resource that we all have is time. That's the precious thing that we're trying to have. And so now consider a freelancer who has 2 or 3 projects, and they got one big project out there that's very demanding. So if Snuffy Smith, the freelancer, can happen to stay up all night writing some programs and get things done quicker, I've had that happen with you and me. You said, well, no, I said, Darren, I got all this stuff done. I got this done, this done, this done, this done. He says, hey, let's just, okay, now we can start balancing and working on it. So we've got some stuff in the tank now. We've got some time in the tank so that this one project can be off of our back for a little while so we can work on some other projects, you know? And so if we're balancing time here, and that's the thing. It's no different than about the United States balancing oil or something like that with their consumption. You know, you got to be careful of what you're doing. So you got to have that valve on there. You know, it's a resource. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and Dave Martin makes an excellent point, especially if you're a freelancer and you get many clients. Absolutely.
Yep.
That's right. So, yeah. So every once in a while, I'll get a comment like, "Oh man, it took you guys 30 minutes or an hour to get into the PowerApps stuff." Well, probably the biggest thing that I get asked about, besides just doing PowerApps stuff, is I want to be a freelancer. You know. So this is, once you learn the PowerApps stuff, you know, you're going to be faced with these things that we spend a lot of time in the live streams talking about. Yep. Because that's my job, is to let you know what to expect in the future of your career. If you're not, you know, a seasoned developer using a specific tool, right. Is I don't want you to be blindsided. I don't want you to have a disaster in any of your projects. And so these are like, hey, listen, down the road here, you're going to, you know, come up to an intersection and there's going to be something there that you need to watch out for. That's what we're trying to do, is just save you guys time and headaches and stuff. You may not realize that you need to hear some of these things now, but hopefully in the future, you know, maybe the person that complains, Darren, you know, it took you an hour to get into the PowerApp stuff in your live stream, you know, maybe they might realize, you know, several months down the road, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, Darren did say that, you know.
There's a lot of soft skills that go along with this thing that you've got to be able to develop at the same time. That's what I consider, that's what these discussions are, developing soft skills. It's no different than if you're going into a college and you're trying to take a class, or let's say you want to, like for me, I took some computer science, but in my computer science degree, I had all kinds of philosophy classes, psychology classes, accounting classes. All that is soft skills that went around. Look, I don't care about all that stuff. I just want to write programs. Nope. Yeah. But you know what? I ended up coming out of that more balanced with soft skills. And that's kind of, I think that's important for us to do, is to talk about that. Yep. Yeah. But
yeah, I remember before I took a programming class, you need to take logic, you know. Yep. I'm like, oh man, like I want to start coding, you know. Oh my goodness. So thankful I did that logic class.
Right.
You know, because it applies to any language. And you know, so we try to share these things, guys, with you that, you know, 10 years from now, I think the Power Platform will be here 10 years from now. 15 years from now, Microsoft will probably come up with something that will eclipse this, you know. But I want to teach you guys skills and give you knowledge that will span the whole length of your profession, you know.
Just like with you, I bet you today there's still things come up today that you're going, oh, that's what Kurt was talking about back in the 90s, man. It was like, I never did understand what the heck he meant by that. But oh, boom, there it is. You know, I bet you still run into that, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I know.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that. Sometimes I feel like I've got a little Kurt on my shoulder when I'm coding or something. Like, Darren, are you really proud of that code you just wrote?
Yeah, I hope that these guys out here.
No, Kurt, but I'm trying to get it done. You know?
I hope these guys are going to be out there thinking about the same thing, is that they're going to have a little Darren sitting on the shoulders going, is this what Darren was talking about? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So something I want to show you guys here on this particular screen, we populate this collection here, okay? And I've zoomed in so you guys can see the code nice and big, so you don't have to strain your eyes. So realizing that we have user organization, okay? And then we're also working with the users table. So bringing up the ERD diagram, go back over here. We're trying to display all the users in this system, okay? However, we have a many-to-many relationship here between organizations and users. Okay. So that's what we have here. We build a collection of users. Okay. Um, I have users filtered. We go through all of those, the mapping table, and we get all the users that are in there. Okay. Um, Now what I have here is because Darren is a part of 3 different organizations. He's showing up 3 times. But what I want is just one record. I don't want them duplicated, right? So we need to obviously modify this code here. See, I am using that collection, users filtered. Okay. And going back to the onVisible, what we should do here is probably restructure this thing. So we go and get those all. I think how I would handle this is instead of doing a collect here, I think I'd like to grab all of the IDs of the users, because if they're the same, I don't want to grab any duplicates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a collect, and I'm going to say call user duplicates, because there probably are going to be duplicates in here. And what I'm going to do is say my dot user ID. That's what I want right there that we were using before. And it's going to put those in there. And what is that problem here? Received 1, 2 or more. Okay, so I do need a comma in there.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do down here, I'm going to move this down. Yeah, get rid of the commenting stuff here. What's that guy's name? Is it Bob Ross, the guy that did the paintings back in the 70s and 80s?
This is your tree. You just put that tree any way you want.
I feel like sometimes that like you guys watching me code here, I've got this thought of my mind of where I'm going, and you guys might see me like Bob Ross, like just making these little lines. Oh, that looks horrible, but it's not until he puts the final touches on, it's like, oh wow, I remember watching those thinking that it's like, ugh. And then once he gets more to the 80 or 90% done, it's like, oh, now it makes sense why he was doing that,
Right.
All right, so I got my duplicates there. And then what I'm going to do is I want to filter this. I want to get all the users where the ID is in the duplicates. Dot value, perhaps. Let's see what happens here. Now, whenever you have a collection, like I did the collect here, I always want to make sure that that is cleared before we get into it, just because we might, go to a different screen, come back. We just don't want that collection to grow and grow and grow. Oh, this is funny. So Wes says the amount of times that my shoulder Darren has chimed in is ridiculous. That's funny. So Kurt, that's your legacy.
Yeah,
People
that's my
now have
legacy.
a Darren on their shoulder, but on that little Darren has got a little shoulder Kurt.
Yeah. And that's what I'm going to do on my epitaph after I'm gone from this world. On my tombstone, it's going to say, "I told you so." Right there with that shoulder. I told you so.
All right. So in this collection, users filtered, look at this. We have one record. Okay. So let me scroll around here. Let's see what we have. Okay.
You need to go backwards in there. You did some kind of advanced stuff there with some collections there, and you need to talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
We need
So
to break the-
I was getting duplicate Darrens. The Darren should have been displayed on the screen, but I'm only so I was seeing him 3 times. I only wanted him once.
So
So
three times in the environment record, right? Or the organization record.
So we've got the organizations here, and then we got the users down here, and then we have this mapping table in the middle. So
Yeah.
what I was doing was I was looking at this user organization. So if I go back over here, and let me see if I can make this bigger for you guys by changing the output. Let's say results to text, and then I rerun this. Here we go. Now, I don't know why this is all grayed out. That's a little weird. Let me rerun this. Huh. Okay. I don't know why that's gray. Never seen it grayed out like that. That's a little weird. Maybe it's just not as dark as this, but so we've got 3 records here in user organization. Okay.
Yep.
And for those 3 organizations, look at this. We have a user ID of 777.
Yep.
I go over to users, who's 7. Okay, 7 is Darren.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the users. Okay, so let's go back to your code now. All right. So you got your user organization sitting out there. It's going to grab all the 7s.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying collect. Now you're going to the user duplicates. That now that's the collection that's grabbing all the 7s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty much going through this result set here where the user IDs could be duplicated, but we want to know if they're in that organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
let's actually look and see the code in here. Let me see if I can get this thing to come up right. If I go to that collection, you'll see what we have, which is simply 3 7s.
yeah.
And then we do a filter on the users where the ID is inside of those values that we got before. Okay. Get the duplicates here. And then we filter the users based on the ones that are in there.
Got it.
Yeah.
In the users
Right.
filtered. Yep.
Now, so yeah, I wanted to see all the users here. However, look at this. If we go over to users, well, where's John, Mary, and Kurt? Well, they don't have any linking up of these organizations. So that's something that we should be able to do here in the developer section is be able to add users to organizations. Okay.
Yep.
And what I should do here, let's see. And if we select an organization, it will rework that. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is if there's nothing selected, it gives me all of them, which is exactly what it does. Okay, so that's good. Because what you end up wanting to do is click on an edit and start adding Kurt to at least his own LLC. Let's put him in a tenant. Okay, now we don't have an environments created for Kurt yet, but let's go over to the save button and see if we got the code in here that will actually save that. Okay, so we go through all of these. Okay, and we patch it. the user organization. So I think that is what we did last week, is we set up the save for the organization. Okay. If I go ahead and save this, just in case you guys have a custom spinner like I do here in this application template, if you add any controls to the screens, you'll want to make sure that the menu and also the spinner is on top of everything.
Now,
that you
okay.
add.
Now, when you say that, you're going to have to go through that process to show them how to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because make them on top of everything. What is that?
Yeah.
And there's something else
I'm-
I want to touch on too.
I'm trying to locate everything here in the tree view over here.
Okay.
To make sure I'm on the right screen, and I am. Okay. So now that we see what screen we're on, I have my toddler trying to break into the live stream.
It's just proof that
Which
we're
can be very
100%.
distracting. What's that?
It's proof that we're 100% organic here.
Okay, so we're on the screen. So I always go in and find the menu, and I bring it to the top. You guys saw me do that. Okay, so we should see that at the top. And then I go look for my spinner. Here's my spinner group.
And the reason why is because there's this thing called a Z order, right? And that and you have you got left to right, but you also have top down. And so what's happening here is if you didn't do that, that spinner would be underneath the other controls that you've placed on the screen. So you wouldn't be able to see the spinner when it shows up. So you have to make sure that that spinner is at the very top of on the top of all your stuff. Now it's invisible, so it's going to be unaffected until it turns on. But if it's not on top and you turn it in to make it visible, all them other controls are going to be on top of it, so you won't ever see it. And that's the reason why he's doing that.
So let's go back to the developer screen and let's go look at the users. Okay, so now we see Kurt and Darren. That is good.
I think there was something else that you went and touched on that you went kind of fast on. I just kind of want to go backwards a little bit if we could.
Sure.
I thought it was really slick. So there's a concept underneath this when you're looking at galleries and you're looking at the selected. And I've noticed that, like, if you want an entire record, you got this item and you have selected. And let's say if you wanted to do a lookup, you would just say in a patch statement, you would just say this field lookup equals this item, or it equals gallery dot selected. Selected is a record. And I thought it was really important when you looked in your code, if you could go over there to where if selected.id is blank, if you remember when you did that.
Are you talking about for the save button down here?
No, I'm talking about in your gallery when you wanted to see all the records.
Okay.
Okay, you follow what I'm saying? Yeah. Sometimes Darren, you're an F-16 pilot, man. You can just go so fast, and it's like I just want to make sure some guys are out there catching this because I think it's really cool stuff. So so look in your code when you wanted to see everything, and you tested to see it or if it's selected.id is blank.
Mm-hmm.
Go look at that code real quick if we get right there. That's the magic right there. Now look at this is blank. That dot selected is a record. When you select something in a gallery, that dot selected is going to be an entire record with all the fields across it. And you'll notice he's got dot ID. That dot ID is going to be blank in there. Or it's going to have, if it's selected, it's going to have some kind of a value in that. It'll be one of the values. Like maybe if you selected Darren, it would be 7, well, maybe not. It's an organization. Anyway, but the point is that dot selected, if you can test that in there to see if anything's been selected or not. And it's the entire record. It's not just one field. It's an entire record. I just want to kind of say that like a broken record here. Anyway, that's a great tool to have right there. If you're wanting to look at and test things in your app to be running right. Or if you want to make sure that there's a certain logical path going on here, like he's done right here, that dot selected. Test the
Go ahead. Yeah. It may not be obvious what's going on here. So if it is blank, it just returns a true value, which means it's going to return everything if it is blank, which is what I wanted.
Yep.
You know, so sometimes you want to create a filter based on things that are selected at the top of the screen, and you might create all this if this, you might put different filters based on an if statement, and you just end up with like 12 different if branches there, or you could
Right.
do something like this.
Exactly.
You know?
And then that is blank and is empty. They can be inconsistent within in data sources that you're working with. But one thing's for sure is if you test an item inside of that record, like the .id, test to see if that's blank, that's going to be very consistent to the is blank. Is blank is designed to be looking at a text field. So that's going to be working perfectly. Whereas if you're looking at is blank as an entire record, it might be an empty record, but it might have the data structure. So it might say is blank is false. But it won't be false if you're looking for an .id and it's blank. I hope that makes sense.
There's been a lot of times when I use the is blank on a record, which is what we have for the selected. Okay, so this is a drop-down list. So Kurt was talking about a gallery, has a selected. Well, the drop-down list has a selected, and it works almost the same in that it returns a whole record. Now, in the past where I've used is blank on a record, sometimes it will give me false, but it really was blank. There really wasn't any data there. So I've always learned to check a field within that record, and then it behaves more predictably.
That's slick there, Darren. I like it. And I also like the use of using this checking selected to see if your gallery is being clicked on or not. Yep.
Is selected. What did you mean by that last part? I guess I didn't follow.
Well, you're right there. You got the is blank. You're testing to see if that entire thing, if that thing returns true, that means your gallery hasn't been selected. It hasn't been clicked on.
Yeah.
So it's just sitting out there open. That's important, man. There's been many times when I'm opening up a screen and nothing's been selected and I've got no control over it. And the number one rule in program is have control over your program at all times. And right there, you have total control over that program right there. This is good stuff right here, Darren.
Well, thank you, Kurt.
Yep.
I think if we don't point out why it's important, people might think that we're just going over some stuff that they're not interested in, which, in today's time, especially with YouTube, I mean, if I release a video, I lose retention. And I think this is pretty common, at least 50% within the first 3 seconds, So I always like to tell people up front what we're doing, what they're going to get out of the video, that type of thing. With a live stream, and it's not so scripted, which is sort of good for you guys. You guys can be a part of it and give us comments and that type of thing. But
it's funny. That's really funny too, Darren, because like you were saying, one of your most popular videos is a button. Everybody wants to see what the button does, right? But how many times do we go into and say, I've never seen a video. I can't find anything on what happens if the gallery is blank. I don't know how to test that. And there's just absolutely no video content. Well, because the video content makers say, well, there's nobody going to be retained. I can't get any retention if I talk about that. So I'm going to turn on these buttons over here.
Or there's nobody searching for that.
Right. Or there's but there's going to be at midnight when you're trying to get your code working and you can't, you need to find that search. So that's what you're doing right there.
Yeah. Now, what I did notice by being on the screen here is there's something else going on. If I click on one of these organizations, it goes blank because there's no users that have access to that organization yet.
Right.
But if I click on it again, all these drop-down lists have a property called allow empty selection, and it's set to true.
Okay.
How do you get an empty selection? Well, you just click on one that's already, here's all 4 of them. Well, that's exactly what I wanted. I want to see them all if there's nothing selected there. And that's what I was going for. Let's go take a look at the code that we have on change here, because it actually does something that I really like. Okay. So I check to see if that's blank. Okay. If it is blank, I just go get all of them. If not, then I go do this. I sort of like that.
I do
better.
I think so.
What do you think of that, Kurt?
I do. I like it. I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to take this code here. And of course, there's with a lot of technologies like this, especially coding, there's probably a dozen different ways of doing it. So it's a good idea to show different ways of how to approach things.
Sure.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do here, and I don't want to delete my code because I might be like, well, I had some code in there before that handled this, but not that. And you want to go back and look at it.
I hate deleting code ever.
You hate what?
I hate deleting code ever.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that's really valuable stuff.
talk to yourself for just a minute there.
Okay. How are you doing, Darren? All right. So it's got, okay, I was looking at self. So what that is I'm going to grab this name of this drop down. And instead of self, that needs to be the actual control name. Okay. I'm going to go to a different screen and then come back and see what we've got. There we go. Those are the 4 users. They're not duplicated. So I really like that. Okay. Is it better to leave the dropdown blank to indicate all records or to add all in the list of values in the dropdown? I've done it both ways. Data is king, and I have liked this way better. It seems like whenever you add an item at the top, it says all items or all organizations. There's just a little more that you need to do for filtering. But I'd like to open up to the rest of you guys. If you guys were writing the application, or if you guys were using the application, which would you like? Would you like to see something up here at the top that says show all? That might be more intuitive, to be honest, if we did that. And I think it's important that we have that because those other 2 users, so we got John Doe and Mary Smith, they're not a part of any organizations. So it is important to see those regardless. Yeah, so that's a good point. Thanks for asking that. Okay. So we have the users here, and I can go in. Let's go in and add Mary Smith to one of these guys. Let's say a new. See, some of these orgs are actually not active. I think the new org name, that's an inactive organization. So let me add Mary to Contoso and hit save. Okay. I'm going to go back. I'm going to select this Contoso, and there's Mary Smith. Okay. Very good. All right. So what still needs to be done here between these 2 screens? Well, we sort of need to polish things up. We need to have the same thing going on for the tenant, the environment, and application. Okay. So to sort of touch a little bit on what Data is King just brought up, if you wanted to add an item there for selecting all, you probably want to turn off that empty selection and just make that the default. Yeah. So, okay. Now, what I want to do here is, so we're just looking at this collection up here. Okay. So what we should do here on this on change is I want to filter it even further. So if they select a tenant, and this might go into the other portion that we need to address on this screen. Okay. So we're modifying Mary here. If I add her to Neese, I can add her, let's say, to I need an app.com. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, are these cascading? Um, they're not drop downs, but they are cascading. So these are galleries. Okay. And if you look at the environments, it's looking at people that are in the tenant. Okay. Um,
Now, what about the screen above this? They were drop downs. Those were cascading, weren't they, Darren? Maybe he was referring to that.
yes. Yeah.
Maybe
So if we go back, that's a good point. Dave might have been talking about these
that's
right
what I
here.
was thinking. That's what I was
So
thinking.
in Contoso, there's no tenants, no environments, no actions. Okay, yeah, he did on the previous screen. Thank you. Um, if I were to go into Neese LLC, there we go. So I have these three tenants associated with that organization. So let's go into Power Labs, and Kurt has a sandbox over there, and Kurt has an app out there in that environment called Kurt's Worst App. So there you go. Yeah, those are cascading. And then what I want to do whenever this second one is selected um, is I want to sort of narrow it down even more for that.
So
So
when you're saying cascading, you got the second one is filtering based on the selection of the first one.
mhm,
The third
yeah,
one is built on the selection from the second one and down, right? So the filters are what's cascading, not the drop down, the filter of the drop down.
yeah. So yeah, your first one's going to be the most open, and the next drop down or gallery will be dependent upon what they selected there, and
Yep.
it can go on down for many levels.
I just kind of wanted to point that out for some people that are saying, "What is a cascading drop down?" So,
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a video where I show how to do that, and I've got the thumbnail's got like this waterfall going cascading from different levels. I was trying to sort of demonstrate that in the thumbnail.
yep. And for those that don't know a whole lot about it or are new to that concept, make sure you learn that concept. It's very important when you're working with data.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you add a private view? Yes, you can. Now, it depends on what you mean by view. So you might want to tell us more about what you're talking about. Um, and yeah, that's how you pronounce your name. So perhaps what you mean a private view is a screen that only has their data, and we're going to actually get to that down the road. But these developer screens need to be developed first, so we can have all the data there. So when we get to that portion, that it makes sense. We got at least some good test data to build those screens with.
Right now, if we could, I'd like to go back over
Mhm.
here to Dave and ask if this was. He asked, "Is this kind of automatic in PowerApps, or do you write it explicitly?" And I'm pretty sure you're referring to the question you had earlier was with the cascading drop downs. And no,
Mhm.
it's not automatic. Um, it is you have to do it explicitly, and you're doing that within the filter of your data source in the items property of each drop down. So it's going to be based on the data that you create, your database tables that you create. He's got one over there he's got an organization table, he's got a tenant table, and something else. Anyway, so the organization you're cascading based on those tables that you've got.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darren. You got organization, tenant, environment, and application, and that's all he did. He went down there and he cascaded. He said, I want all the organizations. He selects an organization, then he goes into the next drop down, he's got tenant, and then he says, okay, filter all those things, all those records that came from that organization. So now it's filtered it down to just that, and then he goes to the next one and he filters down that one.
Yeah.
um
And this particular video will show you this on a screen where I actually sort of show it on the screen as I'm going along. So let me share that link if you guys are interested in knowing more about cascading. I take more time to sort of go over a lot of those details.
yeah. Now if you could just go down that and demonstrate what you did earlier. So just real
Mhm.
quick, now that you're on the
Sure.
screen, you got organization to tenant to environment to application. Now go back and
Mhm.
do that what you just did with me, where you had
Mhm.
Kurt's worst app. Go down that
All
line
right.
in your program, and
Okay.
then maybe he can see what's happening there.
So these are all the applications that are in this environment. So if I were to change this, well, it does nothing to go off of, so it's going to be blank, right?
Yep.
And then this one, it's only going to give me the items that are in this particular tenant.
Yep.
So you wanted me to go back into, let's say, Kurt.
Yeah. Let's say you just blanked it all out. Yep. There you go.
Oh, to blank it out, I'll click on it again. So it's blank. So now we've got all 4 users.
Yep.
And they'll go into there. We have those 2 users. And there's only one tenant associated with Kurt LLC.
Yep.
And we're still in there. Now we don't have code in here to slim it down anymore. But you have no environments set up.
Right. Right.
Now the question is, well, how do we do that? Well, if you guys have been tuned in for a while here, we can add a new an environment. Okay. And well, look at this. We've got cascading stuff going on here.
Yeah.
So Kurt Larson, there's none there. Okay. So if I say add new, Kurt's new, make sure this is set up right in this tenant. And let's say test. Save it. Okay. Now, if we go around here, let's see if it comes up. Now we might have just discovered a bug here. Yeah, so we should have added that. Okay. Let's go back directly to the data and see what we have for that, for environments. So if I go over here and say select. Okay. And here it is. Okay, this is looking good. The restream environment's giving me a little bit of trouble here. Okay. So we know that that record was added. That's good. So my question to myself is, why isn't that displaying here?
Yeah.
Oh, it went under PowerApps US. That's why it's so important, guys, not to just go directly to your database and start entering a bunch of data,
Right.
because you'll blindly think incorrectly that, oh, I've got the CRUD screen here, I got a screen here, and yeah, it looks at the data, but
and that's why the way you do things is really good. I like the way you do that, where you don't put stuff in the data. You actually write the code to put the stuff in the data. And I've never done that. I've always been the guy that goes in there and writes code in the data, and then I end up getting bugs later down the road. So I really, hats off to you on that one. That's smart stuff there, Darren.
So the question is, why did it associate this new environment that we added with PowerApps US? That's a little weird. Okay, so Kurt Sandbox. Now, if I click on this, it should have been Kurt LLC. And where is where are the notes here? This is a little.
Maybe the email got crossed up somehow in there.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to do some troubleshooting and figure out what happened there. Data's King says, whenever you reset all the dropdowns, the tenant should show up if the user selects this first. So Data's King, I don't know if you're talking about the main screen we were on before, if you're talking about this one. And then Inaya says, yes, their data only entries would only be accessible to a handful of people. Yeah. So what you do in that case is within PowerApps, you filter based on what they should be able to see, and you don't display everything. So almost everything I build shows examples of that. So if you stay tuned, you actually see a lot of that. And it's actually built into the menu. So if they're not a developer, they're not even going to see this menu item. All right. So when we added a new one, So these are all the environments. I'd have to say debugging and troubleshooting is not, it's probably the most boring, most unfun part of software development. But believe you me, a good chunk of your time will be spent doing just this, what I'm doing right now, is figuring, okay, there's a bug. And I would say it's the most important skill to have as a developer, as an app builder, even if you don't consider yourself a coder, because the less good you are at troubleshooting and debugging, the more time you're going to get stuck. You're going to be stuck on things for days and not knowing what to do. And then the managers and stakeholders like, hey, when's this going to be done? We told you about that bug last week. It's still not done. And you're like, I know. And they're asking you how long it's going to take for you to fix it. And bugs can be very difficult to track down unless you do things in a proper way. And I always try to teach you guys the proper way to avoid as many bugs as possible. But bugs can take up tons and tons and tons of time. In fact, a lot of things that we do as software developers, the seasoned developer, any seasoned developer will learn this. They will make decisions that will lower the amount of bugs that they'll have later on. Okay.
Absolutely.
And that comes down to naming things properly, picking the right scope for your variables. All these things that it doesn't seem like there's any importance. It's like, oh, well, they say always, start TXT on all my text boxes, and if you look at it in code, you're referencing a text box, it just makes, it sticks out. Oh, that's a text box because we named that with TXT. So there's a lot of little things in there that we teach, that we show you guys. It may not seem important, but boy, is it.
And you're going to learn, you're going to get better the more you do it. If you don't do it for a while, you start losing some of those skills. The skill is just honing that brain into thinking, where's that thing going to be at? Remember when you laid that code. But don't listen to Darren. Don't listen to Darren. Don't listen to anything he said, because everybody's got to learn from the burn. You're going to go out there, you're going to try some stuff, and you're going to get caught in it. And you're going to be going, oh my goodness, you're going to learn from the burn. Everybody has to learn from the burn. You'll know. It's kind of like not saving. It's kind of like not saving your data for a long time and working for 8 hours, and then the power goes out and then you got nothing and you lost everything. You lost 8 hours of work. It's happened to me. We all have to learn from the burn,
Yeah, I just, you saying that makes me want to come out here and do a save. Now, PowerApps, saves automatically for you every 2 minutes, right? But if you never save at the beginning, it will never start saving every 2 minutes. Oh, look at this. That was off.
Shame on us.
Oh my goodness. Who turned that off?
It must have been me in the middle of the night who did that.
You're funny.
But you might not be working in PowerApps all the time. This is, like Darren said, this is stuff that could go, down the road 20 years from now. You're going to remember these things. Debugging happens in every language. Happened back when I was working with Assembler. Happens in PowerApps.
Yeah. So this is the environment data. Okay. And this is got to be the newest one here. Kurt's new environment. There's only 3 in the whole system. Okay. Now, how do these match up with the tenants? Well, it's right here. So what you can do at this point is you go find the tenants and see what's tenant 2. Okay. Tenant 2 is PowerLabs US. So whenever you see a bug, you need to figure out whether the data was saved wrongly to the database, or if it's not reading it properly. And then even if it reads it properly, is it being displayed properly? So there could be different spots. So the first thing I want to make sure is, did the data get in there right? And it was not put in there right, because I didn't want it to be associated with PowerLabs US. I want Kurt's new environment to be in kurtlarson.com tenant. Okay. So there's something wrong in there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is Kurt's new environment, and I've got Kurt LLC here.
Mm-hmm.
So something's afoot.
Like I said, I'm going to stick with it. I called it. I think it was the email got crossed out. Let's see what happened with that email address.
Really? The email?
So that's what I'm calling.
Okay. All right.
Let's see what happens.
So this is where we actually put this in to the environment whenever we save it. And we save this this tenant ID. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. Let's see what's actually in here. So I'm going to insert a label. Put it down here at the bottom. Paste that there. What do we have? We have an ID of 2. And whenever I use little labels like this, I like to give them really strange colors that will remind me I need to delete those eventually. Okay, so we've got a 2 there. What about, and it says Kurt LLC. Let's actually look at the name. Kurt LLC. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's go back over here. And these are, okay, so these are the tenants. Okay, we should have 4 tenants in this dropdown. Do we have 4 tenants in this dropdown? We do. Okay, now we picked Kurt LLC. And we found out just a few moments ago that was 2. But is that true? No, Larson.com is 3.
It's not.
So something here is really strange, right?
It's a null. The GUID is null too, as well. So
yeah, so there is a place on our screen to enter a. Make sure my browser window's open here. You see how there's a GUID here? If you know it, you can enter it. But if it's blank, it's of course it's not going to put it in there if you don't put that in there. Okay. Okay. So environment. So we are looking at organization. Oh, look at that. An organization. We don't want organizations because in this coding window, it is such a pain sometimes. Sometimes you want it there and you can't get it to come up, and once it's up, you want to get rid of it, and it will never go away. It's like,
right.
We don't want organizations being displayed there. We want tenants. Do you see how easily you can get something fouled up? That's why it's so important to have a good ERD diagram to always be able to reference, to keep your mind straight,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now we've got some tenants here. So now if we run this, now we've got kurtlarson.com. We've got Kurt's new environment. Now if we save it, go into kurtlarson.com, we got Kurt's new environment.
Ta-da!
So we effectively fixed it, right?
Yep, I think so.
I didn't know how long that was going to take me to figure out. I hope it was just going to take 30 seconds, but it took me a few minutes.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. You've been through these live streams where it's taking longer. So that's part of the beauty of the live stream that you do is it's not a sanitized environment. 100% organic. Yeah. I
tell you, somebody that's really good at debugging or spotting things. I was really blown away this last week in our accelerator system. Menti. Oh my goodness, Menti is a really sharp guy.
He does very well at debugging. That's not the first time he did that either. There was a couple times I said, "I see you, Mente," because he caught something pretty quick. Yeah. I liked it. Yeah.
All right. So now that I don't need this label anymore. We figured that out. Now, that is always a little bit of a risk when you start duplicating screens. Let's say you got 4 different screens that are going to be operating and look almost exactly the same. Whenever you copy something, you got to make sure whenever you copy code, this comes to play as well. Make sure you change the things in there that apply to what you've pasted it into and not what it came from, right? Because if you don't, then you're going to get some unexpected results there. Okay. So now that we have that, let's go back over here to the developer screen, go into users, and let's see how this has changed all of this. Okay. Well, we should have an environment now. Okay. But we have no applications in your environment. Okay. Well, let's go back over here. We'll go into applications. And we have 2 applications, Kurt's worst app, and we have onboarding. Okay. So let's create a new one, and we'll say Kurt's new app. And these are environments. So that seems to be about right. And I'm going to put some dots in there just to see that we've got some notes. I'm going to hit save. Okay, there's Kurt's new app, and it is pulling up the right environment.
Looks good.
So if I go back over to users, look at that. Now we've got this. Okay. Now, whenever you're looking at users like this, I haven't been associated directly with tenants, environments, and applications, but I am a part of the Kurt LLC. So in your mind, if you're building this app, would you want me to be displayed here or not based on what I've picked here? Kurt, if you were using the screen, would you think, oh, well, it should only show me the users that are associated here and here and here?
Yeah, I'm thinking that through a little bit here. Right. It's not as intuitive, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I can see it both directions like that you got right now. You're part of both of this.
I think if you've got a ton of users across the board, you probably want to drill down like, hey, what users have access to this? You know what I mean? And they'll probably realize that as we start cascading into these and selecting, they'll see it slim down and slim down and slim down. Okay. So that's something that we could add there. And I'm looking at the time, and I don't want to go down a road if I can't complete it in the current session. Okay. So I feel like we've got this first thing here to work. What's that?
I kind of like the way you got that cascading across there. I think that looks pretty cool. I'm wondering maybe like a pop-up when you select on something on there to see the users underneath. That's what you're asking for, right?
Yeah. Should we change? Because right now, if we go look at our data, let's go look at our diagram here.
Mm-hmm.
What we've been populating last week and this week has been this user organization. We really haven't been dealing with these three things here.
Right.
And these three tables here we could find out if, we need to take out users that are being displayed in the middle of the screen based on their absence in these other three screens. And Pratik, I do see your questions, your comments here. You want to be able to create a single form within 365 user, and also the data will store to database. Yeah, that's actually very simple, straightforward. The simplest way to do this, if you have Dataverse, is to use the Copilot when you go in to use PowerApps and just say, hey, I need some information being displayed. Now, if you say form and you mean Microsoft Forms, then you can do that as well, but that's a completely different thing. And it's not really related to everything that we're trying to get into today, but I may make a video. If you post that over in the free community, I'll respond to you and either find you a video or I can create a video for you. At least I'll put on my list of things to do. Okay. So I didn't want you to think that
which could also be a list of things for me to do. Yeah.
So. Well, Kurt, you always take so long to do a thing that I
do. That's the problem. And actually that might not be something for bad. that might not be a bad thing for me to go and look and try to do, because I could learn something from that too.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Darren.
Well, what he's describing here is probably the first thing you should learn. If you go to any of our more fundamental videos, in fact, I could probably show you, but we do all this in the more fundamental videos here. So if you join the free community, and while we're talking about this, I should probably display the link at the top. Okay. And you go into Classroom here. And if you go into the crash course, my crash course is now free. If you join this community, you'll get access to this crash course. Okay. And I've got this item, absolute beginners. Watch this. Okay, so we go over a lot of the basics there, and then app in a day takes you into actually building an application and doing all these things the way that I would recommend doing them. So I
Okay.
just wanted to touch on that since that question came up.
Now I'm going to be here. I'm going to be off camera, but I'm going to be sitting right here, Darren. So
Okay.
that's just for a little bit here. Okay.
Okay. Very good. So, all right. So what we need to do is if we're going to slim these down, which I think we'd like to do, is there needs to be something that modifies this collection that the gallery is going off of. And Scott, good morning. Thanks for the compliment on the layout. I always try to make a good looking layout that users like to use. The last thing you want to do is create an application and the users refuse to use it. Then all the attention comes back on you. Like, why'd you create an app that's just so horrible looking that nobody wants to use? you know. Um, so what I want to do here is modify that collection um, further. Okay, so I'm going to take that. And there within the tenant, we want to go into the on change. So when that is changed, do a clear collect on that collection. In fact, I might want to zoom in here a little bit and take out that overlay at the top so you guys can see more. And I want to filter. A lot of times I have to think through things. I don't know exactly the code I'm going to write. I got to think through it here. So whenever that changes, this is the table that I want to look through for user IDs. Okay. So this actually should be similar to this in that, yeah, we have users filtered. Which has all of them. If it is blank, okay. User. Yeah, I think these last two portions here I want to reuse. Trying to zoom out so you guys, both you and I can see two blocks of code we want to work with together. So I'll copy this and I'll worry about the empty selection here in a moment. Now, instead of looking at the user organization, this table here, I want to look at this one, the user tenant. I'm going to do Control H, which allows a search and replace. Okay, user. Place that. Yeah, we'll pull in the user tenant table. And let's just go look and see what's out there. Let's see if there's any data in the table. And there is not. Okay. And that's fine. We want to make sure this is right. Kurt's back.
Yeah, been watching.
User tenant. Going back to our wanting to close down some of these things here. Now, these are sort of like browser tabs. You're working in SQL Server and you might have tons of tabs here. What I do, this is the most important thing. I'll do close all but this to get back to this. So we're looking in user tenant. Okay. For users that are in that tenant.
Filter user tenant.
Now, what that's going to be is, tenant ID. What is the error? The filter has some invalid arguments. Tenant.id. So it looks like we have something else to debug and troubleshoot.
You have tenant filter, not tenant filter. Look, you misspelled tenant. It's tenant. Look at how you.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought that was maybe it. Okay. I guess it wasn't it. Never mind. My bad.
Okay, so we've got some type of this is an error. Well, if there's nothing selected, that's the case. There's nothing selected. That's what's going on. So let's go pick this guy, and then we were going to deal with an empty selection later on.
Okay.
So now we have something selected. So now it shouldn't complain, but it does. Tenant ID is not recognized. All right, so we'll go back in here. Do we have a tenant ID? Yeah, it's right there. Now, did I spell it right? Tenant ID. Okay.
So in the table you have user tenant you're looking for, but in the table, the hard table you're looking for is user tenant. So is that a problem in your
where do you see the misspelling? Yeah.
Go back to your code over there. I don't know.
Put a T there.
Yeah, that's what that's
man. Yeah, that makes me upset when I misspell something on the data end of it.
You are living proof that you don't have to know how to spell to be a computer programmer. Living proof.
All right. Yeah, that needs to be updated here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this guy. I'm going to say rename table. Rename that guy. Okay. Now, PowerApps doesn't know that. So we got to go over here and go find our tent.
Tenant.
And refresh that tent to be a tenant. And it is not happy with that.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So you probably have to kill that. Right?
What we need to do, there's probably these relationships need to be updated. If I close this down and then bring up the diagram again, let's see if it says, yeah. Okay. Sure. So it wants to remove a relationship, and I'm going to say okay, and I'm just going to re-add it, and then we'll re-add it with a good name. So there's always some repercussions like this.
Yeah, I was actually thinking you might have to drop that data source and bring it back in. Maybe not.
Oh yeah. So Scott says, this is a common look, feel that one that clients are drawn to from familiarity. Yeah, I like it. And then may I ask, what is the screen showing your table layouts and relationships? Hard to see on my phone. That is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. It's a free tool, and it's highly recommended. If you're going to be working with SQL Server a lot, definitely have this tool. All right, so I'm going to say your diagram will be updated. Okay, let's go ahead and hit OK and allow it to remove whatever it needs to remove. And now we've got a table just sitting out here by its lonesome. And I'm going to select, where is the user ID? There it is. And I'm going to drag this down and recreate that relationship. Let me try to make this as big as possible. Okay, so user's ID goes to user's ID within that table. That is correct. And it typically gets it right there. Okay. But we also need to make sure that we have got a tenant ID here. I'm going to try to zoom out in. I'm going to drag out from that column up here to the tenant table, and it's going to recreate that relationship. Okay, and that looks right. Look okay.
Now don't get in trouble with that user down there, that user tenant down there either. Right there.
What's that?
Well, that what's selected right there, it says user tenant.
Really?
Well,
did I? Like user tenant. Yeah, I renamed it down there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think things got out of sync between the diagram and what I did there on the side. Object with the same name already exists. Okay. So I'm not going to worry about that now. What I am going to do is hit save all, and that's going to create all those relationships or recreate them. And hopefully we'll get in sync with that change I made over there.
Okay.
Yeah, so the diagram still thinks there's a table out there called tint.
Boy, you almost got to delete that whole dang thing, don't you?
I'm going to exit out. I'm going to save the diagram and try to bring that back in. That's why when I saw I misspelled a table name, I'm like, oh no, because you got all this.
DBMSs hate it when you have to change table names or field names. They just hate it. Yeah.
So I'm going to refresh this. I'm going to make sure this table still has the right spelling. Tenant. And what is that? I've got a tool here that might help us out. Let's see. Zoom it. There we go. How do you guys like that?
Yeah.
It's a tool called Zoom It. Okay, I'm making sure that I haven't misspelled anything else. It's looking good to me. I'm going to hit escape to get out of that. And I'm going to try to bring up this diagram again.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to misspell stuff, but you're just going to have to stay consistent with your misspelling, right?
Yeah, and I hate to do that because
right.
I've got big plans for this application.
Okay.
And I don't want it to forever be
tinted.
Tinted. And yeah.
It's going to be tainted. Your user tinted is going to be tainted.
Yes, Scott says, seems like it needs to have a little bit more intelligence. Well, in today's age of AI, you would definitely think so. But it's been like this for years.
And you know what's so funny is back in the days of DBase, before access, the days before access. So we're going to call that BA. you could do that all day. You could change database table. You could rename stuff easy on the fly, fields on the fly, but you can't do that nowadays. I don't know. It's like they made it better, but they made it worse than that. You know, there's something wrong about the way they've done it. It's less dynamic somehow.
It does not like that at all. Okay. Gee whiz. What I might need to do, just exit out here. Yeah, man, I really messed that up. And it makes me wonder if I should have tried to rename it within the ERD diagram. It probably would have helped me out there. So each of these database objects, so talking about SQL Server, there's more of a learning curve. There's more stuff going on that maybe you have to be aware of and be able to manage. So all these things that we create, the relationships, the tables, the columns, all these things, individual things that we create, a view, they're all these database objects, and they are stored in a SQL Server database table, you know? So there's a little bit of inconsistency here that hopefully I'll be able to rectify here. Scott says, I love the way intelligence and update capabilities within SharePoint and the Power Platform. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to try to bring this back up. And what I was trying to do is remove it completely from my diagram. And what you can do is you can break up these diagrams as they get big. You can break them down into different sections. Like this might be a whole section. This, it brought in the tinted again. You know, I could have an ERD diagram for just these along with the user and make that a separate type of thing. We could do that. Now, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to complain. I'm going to save changes. No. Okay. I'm going to create a new one. And every once in a while, you'll get these messages here. Let's see. Yeah, I got this error. Index was out of the bounds of the array. Okay. So I've got a diagram 0. Okay, let's add a table. Okay, it doesn't like that. What I'm gonna have to do is completely close out and come back in. When it gets like that, it's about time to restart some stuff. Bring that back up. And it's sort of good that you guys see this, that, you know, if I don't show you all the troubles that I go through and I edit all this stuff out, you guys think that it should be that way, that you should never have any issues that you got to work through, right? So,
well, it points out, puts an exclamation mark on the fact that make sure that your structure is everything is named the way you want it to be named, typed the way you want it to be typed before you do anything. Make sure that gets done, because once you have to make changes in it, especially when the naming of things or the typing of things, you're almost deleting the whole darn thing, you know, and starting over as far as your table is concerned.
There are two very difficult things in the world of IT. One is naming things. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah.
What's the second thing?
I don't know. I can't remember. I know that. I remember seeing it. I thought it was so true. What is it? What was it? It was naming things.
Yeah, I'm going to add in the 3 things that I want in here. I'll work with the relationships between these 3 tables and hope that it sort of, oh, look at that. Look at these relationships that are already there.
Wow.
got a tenant. Move this guy over, and this user tenant should be right in the middle. And I think when we first started creating this, we weren't thinking that there would be a many-to-many relationship here, but there is. So we do have a tenant ID for the user right here. Oh boy, here we go, Kurt. Are you ready for this? Go. I remember the old days of DBase in the early to mid 90s, working with systems during NATO missions in Bosnia. Wow.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's funny because I used to do a lot of work with the Army, with DBase and DBXL and all that. And it was interesting on how many people that were in the Army, the enlisted members that were actually building things in DBase 3, and they were actually doing pretty good, but they would get sideways in there, and then they would call people like me in here to fix it. And I just remember they had so many great ideas. And in fact, I think that was your first citizen developers, were these Army personnel trying to create software, because, you know, your computers were coming up in that time, and the military was taking forever. And you know how governments work. You know, they took much longer to get adapted to that. And these guys were like, I need this technology now. And the grassroots were doing that. So I bet you were part of that, weren't you, Scott, doing that? And actually, I think DBase, and I know I'm probably going to get in trouble saying this, but I think DBase was a better DBMS than Access, SQL Server, all these Dataverse. I think it was just, you could actually create tables on the fly in your programs running, and it would actually be persistent data as you're running your program. You can't do that in PowerApps right now. I wish they could do that. Anyway, there's just so much. We can do an entire 2-hour live stream on that.
He says, you're 100% right. I was Air Force.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, that's awesome.
So we're going to get the user orgs here. And I think it should be user tenants. Okay. User orgs. And I do a for all. So that should be a single record. And then we go through that, filtered, user tenants. Just filtered.
Okay, you're filtering user tenant.
I need to go back and look at what I was thinking here. So help me think through this, Kurt. So this is where I deal with if there's a blank selection. Okay. And maybe I should put that in.
If it's blank.
There's something else we have to do, so I'm sort of not wanting to do that. But these two things here, this is what I was working with. Mm-hmm. Okay. So once they select it between these two things, so over here on the organization, we say users org. Okay, so that gets us the middle, this tenant here. Okay. So it wouldn't be just one record. It would be all the users in that tenant. Okay. User tenants. Okay, this is making sense. Okay. And then we do a for all. on user tenants. That's what we should be doing. Okay, we go through each of those
Yeah.
and we collect the users, but I don't want to look in just all users. Should I be looking at all users or just the ones that
Users filtered.
users filtered? I want to do a clear. This guy. So for each of the tenants, we go look up these users.
Right.
User ID. I don't know why I have this down here. But all that gives us is this, the call users filtered. Now down here, that's what it's using. Okay. So if I change this to LLC here, here's Darren. I need an app. But if I go back and say Kurt LLC, I got both of us, kurtlarson.com tenant. Should it be showing both of us? I think so, but realize there's no data in this. So tenant, let me bring this up here.
If you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated.
Yeah, so there's no data in user tenant, and good reason. We haven't had any code that put anything in there.
Right.
Okay, so let's go look at a full user list here, and we'll go edit Kurt, and we've got Kurt LLC here. Well, he needs to be added to this guy, and we'll hit save. And now when we run this, is he in there? No. Do we have the code that far in there? Okay, so we do a patch on the organization. That's where we end. We never do any of the patches for the others.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a look at yeah, so Scott says, now, Scott, I've seen you really active in the community, and I love that. And by the way, Scott is the one that gave us that awesome spreadsheet. Remember a few weeks ago, I think I
right. I do
yeah,
remember that. Yeah.
turn a spreadsheet into a PowerApps app, and it was a really cool spreadsheet.
Yeah.
This is the guy that brought it up.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah.
I see you, man. That's good stuff. I remember that.
And I think he's commented recently, yesterday, maybe, that he has some follow-up questions. So Scott, I mean, we're not going to go back into that app, but I love this engagement, and
maybe you need to book a call and talk to us about some stuff here.
yeah, I love this active build video you're doing. It really does give the community a view into the steps development, as well as another developer method of using best practices. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think today's live stream is just an awesome live stream. It's one of my favorites. It's the way the topics that we've covered and the balance between hard stuff and soft stuff. Yeah.
I'm so glad you say that, Kurt, because sometimes whenever there's a lot of dead air, dead space, and I don't see a lot of comments, I'm in my head thinking, oh, everybody's bored. I gotta do something to make this more exciting, but this is what you guys are tuning in for.
There's never a lot of dead space with you and I in a live stream. There's never a lot of dead space.
So Kurt, I've got something I want to sort of share with people. Now I do need to run the restroom real quick, and I've got I think it's maybe a minute, so I'll be back in 1 minute, okay? PowerApps has been the key ingredient for the hundreds of people that we've helped dominate in their organization. With this one skill, you're able to simplify processes for countless tasks, like tracking leads, doing inspections, logging attendance, booking desks in a shared office, generating reports, tracking employee performance, and the list goes on. If you have a project that you need to get done, or you're an IT professional or a developer, or if you plan to eventually do some freelancing work with Microsoft PowerApps, I am literally the only person you need to accomplish your goals. Spreadsheets and all the old ways of doing things are becoming redundant, and the people who are able to build PowerApps are going to accelerate their professional career so much faster than everyone else who's okay being average. I have over 20 years experience as a software developer and have been working in PowerApps for over 3 years. We have lots of course material for you, but if you're eager to accelerate your expertise with PowerApps at a much faster pace and want to work directly with me, this is what me and my team are going to do for you. Number one, we're going to figure out exactly what projects and skills you're working on and the overall end goal. Number two, we're going to get clear on exactly what data sources are needed for your projects. If it's a particular project with a deadline, we're going to work with you to make sure that you meet that deadline. And number four, we're going to work with you to make sure that you master the platform. So not only can you finish any projects that you're currently working on, but the projects that come up in the future. And you might want to take those skills and become a freelancer in the future. If that sounds like something that you're interested in and you want to expedite the process of being able to build apps that can literally be used for years, and you want to be an important asset to your organization and any future companies you work for, click the button below and we can have a 15-minute chat about what you're needing and how we can help.
There we have it.
Well, I guess that was a little longer than.
That's okay. I was getting ready to get into a spiel. I'm glad you came in because these guys were going to have to deal with the spiel.
All right. Well, I feel better. All right. So what we got going on here is, we never saved the tenants. So let's take a look at that here. So we do a for all, and we filter all the items in those organizations, and we look at all of them. Now, we used to have this toggle wherever it's true, and I do like that, because if they're not in there, then we shouldn't be showing them. Okay. So this is an interesting thing, Kurt. You've done some work with some toggles recently within a gallery, right?
Yeah.
So this is really talk about toggles inside of galleries. Not only that, but they cascade.
Yeah.
And what you'll notice is whenever you're going to put true values out into a database like this, a lot of times you don't have a record for a false value. The record just wouldn't exist, right?
Right.
So in some cases, what I'll do is I'll go out there and remove the existing data and not worry about if it's in there, then, if it's in there, then don't add it. If it's not, then add it and all this stuff. So if you look at this code that I have, if that toggle is not on, I remove it.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I had this true. That's why it's really important to put comments in your code, guys, because you think, oh, well, it makes sense to me and I'm the only person looking at this code. And I literally was in here just 1 week ago and I'm trying to remember what I was doing. So think about that.
Yeah.
And if I had some more comments, like I set this to true because I need to do that for this, and in fact, if you're going to say true here, it doesn't even make sense to have a filter. So I go through that mapping table, that user organization table, and I do a lookup on, see, we're going through a loop here for all, and we say as my, I say, well, we're the my.id. So we're going through the
You're going to
the
touch every item
organization.
in that. You're going to touch every item in that gallery.
Yeah.
And
And I'm going to remove them.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to make sure this stuff is indented properly. Otherwise, you'll look at the code wrong. Right? Say with, there's a user organization. We go look it up. I would have to say, because of that requirement, Kurt, the decision to have all these weird relationships, many to many, it really made the application more complicated, quite a bit so.
it is.
But it's actually more common than what you might think. At first, like, oh, I just need an app that does this, or those are the requirements. Oh, we just need an app that does this, and you build it, and it's like, oh, actually, yeah, it needs to be set up this one little tweak here, and you're like, okay, and you listen to it, it's like, oh, I've designed my tables wrong, and now I got to redo things, and but even if you set them up right, a lot of apps do get really complicated really quick.
That's
just
why.
based on this.
That's why when we were talking about it earlier on, and we were talking about not programming yourself into a corner. In the app design or the data design, that's number one right there, because you just said it. You called it many to many. When you go into a many to many, it becomes more complex. That's why, I get what Microsoft's saying. Hey, look, you can build an app just on a napkin, and it'll draw it out on a napkin and it'll build your app, or you can do a one table app and it's great. And you can do that. And citizen developers can do that. And Scott can attest to this. Scott, up there, you listen, I'm sure still. You can attest to this. That's easy to do. But when you start breaking this stuff down and get into a real application that's got very strong flexibility, you have a lot of flexibility built into this app right now with this many to many. You take that many to many out and it's gone. You don't have flexibility now. So the more flexible you got, the more complicated it's going to be, but the more control you have. And so more control means more complication. It take away that control. Yeah. Snuffy Smith, the citizen developer, can throw an app out there, but that app's not going to do anything but play tic-tac-toe. That's all it's going to do. It can't do anything else. So that you get what you play for, man.
Yeah. Yes, we go through all the orgs there, and we should have a patch for the user themselves. I've got Kurt's first name out here. Of course, that should be txt user first name. What I like about PowerApps is if you rename a control, it'll update your code for you.
Yeah.
A lot of other platforms and languages, it doesn't do that for you.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Love that.
Me too.
If I go to my button, am I touching that text box at all? No, I'm not. So yeah, this screen does need a lot of work, and I've been working with them, sort of together for that reason. So there's the user organization. So now we need to do the similar thing. It should be very similar, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
For
that's the nice
all.
thing. Once you build it up for one, it's going to be the same process for the rest of them.
Yeah. So grab all that, and I'm going to paste it down here, but I'm going to leave myself some good comments this time.
There you go.
So this code makes more sense. This block of code updates the, what's it called? Tenant users?
Yeah. I don't know.
Tenant users?
Tenant. Don't do it.
And you want to make use of ChatGPT, paste a big block of code like this in the ChatGPT, say, hey, put all the comments in here for PowerApps, and it will understand your code and put in comments. It's sort of cool.
As long as it's not too complicated.
Yeah.
I did that the other day, and ChatGPT said, Well, median calculation is very complicated. So we put a comment in here to where you'll do that. I'm like, really?
All right, so here it's going to be this tenant gallery. So I'm going to name this gallery gal user tenant listing. How about that? So we got that. Is this gallery up here named right? Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so for each item in here,
If it's taken out, you're removing.
let's go look at the toggle name, which will probably be different, right? TOG, toggle.
Tenant.
Almost misspelled it again. Tenant user. We'll use that one. Okay. Very good. Now it's starting to look better. User tenant. We're going to look up user tenant. Here's the user ID.
You're
Here's
gonna
the
get that particular record, and you're gonna remove it. If the value's turned off, you're gonna go get that particular record in the user tenant table and remove it.
yeah. And this will be user. I want to say my user tenant because I don't want it to be ambiguous with the actual table name.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes PowerApps has trouble with that when you're doing some nested fors in there and complicated widths.
We have an is blank here. The user org. Yeah, I'm going to put my here. I want to make sure this is really clear and not misunderstood.
Yeah.
Very good. There we go.
As long and drawn out and as boring as this can seem, Darren is about the fastest one I've ever seen working like this, though. He can flat scoot when it comes down to changing code and keeping logic straight in his head. It's good stuff.
I think where I sort of fail, or it's a weakness, is I absorb information slowly, and then once it's like really like I've fully absorbed all the information, I can work very quickly.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about that, how I'm wired, and you throw me into a place where I'm helping someone, I'm tutoring someone, they're like, okay, so we've got these 50 tables here, and this screen does this and this and this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't understand your application yet. I couldn't even begin to to give you good advice. And what's cool is I'll bring Kurt along on those. And Kurt's, no, I got it. They're just trying to do this and this. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. But then once I can get you to see that, then you just go, you go to town. I can't go that fast. I just never have. Even in my, and I'm a pretty good programmer, but even in my best days, I couldn't have done that. So, yeah, it's pretty impressive, really, I think.
Now that you told me I'm like a fighter pilot, I hear Top Gun songs now when I'm just flipping around.
There's a psychological issue for that.
And if it wasn't there, the Kurt on my shoulder would be humming this song.
Right.
All right. So we're going through, and this filter bothers me for some reason because we're not actually filtering.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing there. Yeah. You're
So I'm going to
doing
get
all
rid
that.
of that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to say, "What? Why are you filtering that like that?"
We call that so what code. Get rid of the so what code. Make it slick.
Refactor.
Refactor. There you go. As my.
I like to make sure all the code's nice and consistent throughout. So we got my user tenant. What we need to have here is a tenant ID, not an organization. Now, why doesn't it? Oh, I have user organization. That's why. User tenant. You see how there's so many now that our application, the requirements are fairly complex, and there's so many places to make mistakes.
Yep.
So that's why you get around a seasoned software developer, and they seem just so anal and very structured and like, man, loosen up a little bit. No, it's that stringentness that they've had to learn that keeps them away from these bugs, you know.
The problem is you can't have a normal conversation with a person anymore. You know, it's over. You know, I mean, your
My
mind
wife complains about that all the time.
It's absolutely the truth. You know, you just can't you can't talk to somebody that's not a programmer anymore at a normal level. I don't know what normal is anymore, actually. So I hate to even say normal.
Yeah. Normal is just something people are until you get to know them, right?
I mean, it's normal to me. I mean, you know, why aren't you guys like me? That's why I always try to tell everybody, you know, you'd be a lot better off if you just listened to me more.
or thought like me, right?
Or thought like me. Yeah.
So now we should have a tenant ID down here. Yeah, Scott says, I wonder if a future capability of Copilot might be to reach across the data sources, updates, changes occur. I think it's just a matter of time before AI is going to be doing a lot of stuff that we never thought it would be able to do because it's doing that.
I agree.
I messed that up. Down
The problem
here.
is, I hope AI doesn't get to a point where it decides that, you know, when somebody changes a name over here on this data source, that it doesn't come in here to our minds and start trying to change that because, you know, we are the problem, right? So we got to change too, you know. So
that's why Elon Musk wants to install these little chips on the top of our skull.
Oh no.
Have you heard of that? Yeah, you can interact with the computer and give it commands just based on your thoughts. Isn't that a little scary?
Yeah,
sounds a little scary to me.
That's crazy.
All right. I think we got some workable code here. So you always need to test stuff out here. Now, how this is working, the tenants, it's showing me this should be like cascading. Now, if I add one of these, is it adding it here? Okay, so if I go here, it's giving me all the tenants, filtering the tenants, and it's saying where the organization ID is in. Is in this label that we have. Where is this label at? This label here. Okay. So this label here has got all the organizations where this toggle is on. So we've got 1, 2, and 4. Then here we say, yeah. So if I were to take out Neese, you see how it filtered that down? I like that, how that works. I'm glad I did that. See, I forgot that I've done some of this stuff. There's so much stuff going on during the week that
Right.
Mhm.
That one, that's very similar to that one HR program that I worked on last year. Remember that? And we had to figure out that one thing about the queries, they're not good at finding things that are not in something, right? Instead of that are. They would say, hey,
Yeah.
check to see if this condition is true and this condition is true. But it doesn't do well, like select the people that are not in this table, you know?
Yeah,
It doesn't do that well. Yeah.
that's true.
That's kind of what you're doing
Let's
here a little bit.
I'm going to go into user tenant and see, because I just hit save. So I'm expecting the records to be there. Okay. So we have one record for user tenant, and I expected a few more. Okay. So we got kurtlarson.com. Okay. Yeah. What I did here was I selected all these. So it should have gone through. So it only got one. Oh, we have an error, Kurt.
There it is.
Did not like something.
Oh, I hate it when that does that. Something doesn't exist.
Specified record was not found. Hmm. I think maybe this loc record. Okay, so that's Kurt. This loc record should have the Kurt record.
That's a value of 6.
Oh, look at this. So this is, you got to be careful when you copy and paste code. Instead of organization ID, this should be
Tenant
tenant ID.
Yep.
Oh, look at this. User organization. This needs to be
Tenant.
user tenant.
Tenant. Yeah.
You see how easy it is to mess things up like that? I have a feeling this is going to be a sort of a big con, but also a huge, great thing for some people. This particular application is going to end up being fairly complex, and I think maybe beginners joining on the Saturday morning live streams, it might be just too much. But the people that are intermediate advanced, they're craving some more advanced stuff that they don't know. So you're definitely going to find that here. But the good thing is we got a lot of beginner material out there that they can view. So,
But also, I just want to encourage people that are beginners, don't give up on this. Just watch this stuff. Just absorb as much as you can, because there's a lot of basic stuff in here too. And so it'll come to you if you keep watching it. That the exposure to the complicated stuff. I mean, calculus is nothing but add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And all 4 of those things are very simple, so of course I still can't add, but
I think this user's here because, I mean, we were getting the wrong data there for a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save again and see if it will go through and do what I'm expecting it to do. Okay. And to me, this is a good sign. If it comes right back right away, I'm thinking, oh, there was an error.
there's an error. Yeah.
A little bit longer than what I was thinking.
See, now, if he had that spinner down below those forms, you wouldn't be able to see it. That's why you have to move those to the top.
Yeah.
I'll be right back while this is spinning.
Okay. I need to get me a little tile like that. Be right back. Okay. So it came back. And thankfully, we do not see any measles down here, no red dots. Okay. So what we got here is, I'm going to change the output type to text. I'm going to re-execute this. Look at that. Boom. This is good. So I think Kurt is 6. So now he is a part of 4 tenants. Okay. Representing the 4 tenants that we selected here. All right. So now we need to cascade that down to environments eventually. But so now that has been saved, I can go back, take a look at users, and see what we have there. Now, what you noticed, my eye caught was that the spinner is not on top on this screen, so I need to make sure that that is right. Okay, so now we can say Kurt LLC. Okay, we got 2 users. Kurt Larson, boom, we only have 1. Okay, so these 2 portions work. And when we go in, that save button works for these 2. Okay. Well, Kurt, how cold is it up there in Illinois?
Oh, that temperature just dropped pretty heavy just now. So I had to
Really?
go get something. Yeah. It's probably in the 30s out there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 85 degrees here at Florida.
Yeah.
Might
You
go
guys-
go take a walk with my t-shirt and my shorts and my flip-flops.
Right, but we can go outside. There's no bugs outside right now.
That's true. We have these things called love bugs. And the first year I was down, I'm like, what is this? And they call them love bugs. I guess the male and the female, they meet up and they reproduce, and they can't disconnect, and they just fly together.
Oh, wow.
It's the weirdest thing. And then you'll start seeing them everywhere at a certain time of year, and they're just everywhere, like all over your car, and they don't bite or anything, but it's just really annoying.
I never heard of love bugs, but I thought, well, I've heard that name, but I guess that there's actually a love bug, huh?
Yeah.
That's something.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what we have here. All right. So we've got these 2 portions working, as I was saying just a moment ago, and these 2 drop-down lists. So think about all the time. So we're looking at about 2.5 hours. Okay. So think about this whenever people are asking you, hey, how long is it going to take you to write the app? I mean, this is a really crude way of doing this, but like you could probably get down to like how many screens they want. Now they'll always say, oh, we just need 1 or 2 screens, but no, you need to think about all your app admin screens and everything. And if it was a really simple screen, I would say it could just take me, 5 minutes to an hour or even 30 minutes or something like that. But with these 2 screens here, we're doing 2 screens at once. There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of many-to-many relationships. Not just one many-to-many relationship, but many relationships. Dealing with users. Users are really the central hub of everything that goes on in this application. It's an onboarding application. So these users are going to be onboarded. These users are going to be managed, or be maybe their HR personnel that needs to onboard, or in this case, we are the system administrators setting things up for organizations, for tenants. So this thing can be super flexible. So guys, if you build a software as a service with PowerApps, all this stuff with the whole organization, tenant, and environment, and apps and users, you guys could almost copy and paste and do everything exactly how I've set up here. And this would be a great launching pad for any SaaS application that you build with PowerApps. So you guys may not be realizing this, connecting these dots, but if I ever have to build an app like this, I will be reusing like the SQL Server scripts and some of these screens, and I could just copy and paste the code. And the second time I do a similar app, it would take a lot less time.
That's right. It's kind of like we're building a template. You got a template going for a SaaS here. That's what you have. Yep. And you were talking about trying to measure based on a screen. Like how long will it take or whatever.
Yeah.
Based on screen. I kind of look at the data. I always look at what's the data that's got to go in there, because because you got to build CRUD screens for all of that, right? And so yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that, really how long it's taken me. If you look at the playlist that this live stream video is a part of, or should be, I should have made it a part of. Let me go in and make sure that that actually is set up right, because otherwise I'll forget. And you say, oh, I thought this was a part of a live stream or a playlist. Yeah. So there's a playlist called PowerApps Onboarding Application. And if you go out to the channel, click on playlists, and you'll see that this might be like the 10th video or so, So when we're done, you'll be able to see it. Like, how long does it take Darren to build a really large application? Well, of course, I'm showing and debugging and talking about things, but if you feel like you're about as fast as I am, you could sort of gauge how long it took me based on the amount of the hours of instruction, right? So.
For some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry, click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want.